this is so great, and like I was just saying, this committee is we run it fairly informally so that we can just ask questions and try to understand each other and everything. So welcome to everyone that's here today. So we're going to call the meeting to order, and first thing we're going to start with is the pledge of allegiance. So in this order?
After the pledge, jeez, okay, Kathy, read.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The very first meeting that we had, no, there's no we about it. It was me. And Kathy kept just saying, I'm going to do this first. Like, and I had it right there. I was just so excited to get started. So yes, we do have to approve the agenda. Mr. Campbell, can you just help us out here since Mr. Campbell's not here?
I was going to be here.
Will you second it?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Okay. And we're going to jump right into public comments. However, I do want everyone to know that what we typically do is just throughout the whole meeting, you can ask questions, make comments. So does anyone want to do a formal public comment so that it's in the record and written down?
I'm going to do a formal public comment just because I
Okay.
had multiple requests to do so
Okay.
on this particular topic. So my comment is related to ABA services in our schools, and I'm actively, as you know, an educational advocate, and I was just in another IEP today. And there had been some conversation going on for quite some time with this committee and outside of this room as well, and in the background at the district employees, regarding the ability for parents to send their private ABAs into the schools. And there had been back and forth about that. I heard today from one of the resource coordinators and also your autism coordinator. I guess it's Julia, but anyway, yeah. That they did attend a conference recently, and that they were going to stick with their full position right now, as it stands, is that the school district is required, if the child requires the service, the school district is required to pay for it. So the real reason, the issue with the outsides coming in is that if that is a service that needs to be happening in school, then the district needs to be providing it. So it's rectifying that situation because really the parents want to provide it for themselves. Because at this time, because Juliet is one person, she's your only ABA. You do have 2 contracted BCBAs, but there's no one else in the district. You have 134 kids, I believe, on the books registered as autism spectrum disorder. However, I want you to know, because I don't think a lot of the board members understand this, that there are plenty of children under the age of 10 that have autism spectrum disorder that are diagnosed medically, but do not yet qualify for the district's autism spectrum disorder, so they're in limbo. So there's more, and obviously you know that 1 in 49 or 1 in 59 is arguable, but 1 in 33 boys for certain. So clearly, if you look at our enrollment numbers, we have a much larger need than those 130 kids. Not everybody is going to need those services. However, I know just my phone call when I walked in here was about an incident that happened in the Kraken today for a child who was not receiving services timely when he was younger, and so now is having issues at school. And so I just feel like we all need to work together to resolve this as quickly as possible. I have participated in a wonderful team at Red Cedar. I think they're a model example of what should be going on in this district. So I wanted to let you guys know that, so that they really could be looked at, or from a district perspective, to see what they're doing right, because they are doing it right, in my opinion. And I go to meetings all over this district. But that team is excellent. So I wanted to let you know that, but also to let you know that, yes, Juliet is providing services when the teams are determining them, but she's only one person.
Yeah.
You have a budget coming up, one person giving the services, and one child is 2 hours a week. One. Imagine that one, and she has to attend all these meetings. And those meetings, this one, just to get this child where we are now, was 6 meetings this year for one child. And it's all because of that paper, it takes 2 hours each time, and we can't get through all of the paperwork process, the procedural process. So we need more than Juliet, is where I'm coming from. So I just wanted you to know that, because I work with outside organizations as well, and everybody's saying the same thing. We need to get this information to you so that you can make the best determinations going forward. So that's it. Thank you.
Anybody else? We're going to go ahead then and approval of the meeting minutes from April 23rd. Do I have a motion to approve?
I move.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. All right, performance expectation 1.3, the comprehensive assessment system. This was presented to us at the last academic committee meeting, and we had, there was a lot to it. There was a lot in there, and so we were not able to sift through all of it during that meeting, and so we asked to bring it back this meeting. Mr. Smith? And so Ms. Almond is going to re-present the performance expectation 1.3 so that we can have a conversation about it and hopefully.
Can I make a statement first?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I think all of us have this calendar. Do you have this, Robert?
Yes.
All of the senior staff has this calendar. And this is the PEs. And if you notice, it's telling us what month is what. The red is a stipulation report, which is a signed statement of compliance. So it's just when we see a PE 1.3, this is a compliance document. When it is in green, it's a monitoring report, which is signed statement that it is accompanied by evidence of compliance. So I just wanted to say, I think we kind of got down in the weeds with 1.3 last time because we started talking about the UGP and all of that. So I just wanted to reiterate what we're told to present. Does that make sense?
No, so then I guess maybe I don't understand what is the committee's work on this? Are you saying that you're strictly presenting it and we have no comment on it?
No,
Or
you
Okay,
can
so-
comment and you can talk, but the expectation is not for us to bring a lot of evidence. For example, in the PE 1.3, this is the comprehensive assessment. So the statement of compliance is for the reporting of student progress towards achieving or exceeding performance standards, BCSD, and civil regulations to document expectations for schools to meet the educational needs of all students. So what we as a group did is we went in and we pulled the policies out of the instructional services that apply to something that has to do with comprehensive assessment. So I put part of those policies in there, and then we ended up going into a conversation about the uniform grading policy. And I think Karen was trying to help me remember today. We got into talking about the uniform grading policy, and this policy is within one of our IS policies. So there were questions about, well, what can we change about it? And we can't change anything about those South Carolina uniform grading policy. I guess if we wanted to add something tougher, but the uniform grading policy is what drives all grades if they're coming from New York or California, how we're to address all of those things. It's a pretty big document. And on our online course catalog, we have on that website, we have a lot of specifics that explain more than this. And I hated to make that many copies of the
No, and actually, my understanding when we were together last time was not so much getting into the weeds in that policy, but just looking at what is written, what you presented to us with this.
Okay.
And just had some questions about this. Is that
Right.
Is that what
Okay,
you're,
well, I kind of
not so much getting into that state policy by any means, all
Okay,
right?
so on the second page, I listed things that every single school is supposed to be adhering to every single year throughout the year. And we have some schools that are better at it than others, but this is the statement, and it talks about the report cards that go out on a quarterly basis, the South Carolina testing data that's required for all students depending on age, that reports out, we reported out all of that this year.
Right.
Map testing, that is our universal screener, so we do that 3 times a year, fall, winter, and spring. And each school gets theirs, and they work individually with the students and the teachers on the map. Then the Fontes and Benel, that's your K and 1 and 2.
And how many times, that was my question about that one, how frequently is that?
It's ongoing.
It should be, yes.
It's ongoing. Just all year, we're trying to see the run up the hill and sliding back, things like that.
But is there a minimum requirement? Is there a suggested frequency for it? As an early L teacher, I want to do it at least once a month. I was just wondering.
I think
if there's anything
they
guidelines.
expect more than that. It's something that really is built into the fabric of the lesson planning and all of that.
Isn't that good with differentiation of instruction?
It does,
I know
yes,
it's-
yeah.
I've got second graders though, and it's only been done 3 times this year.
Really?
Then I need to talk to that principal, because ultimately they're the monitor of that.
And see, that's what we have to kind of get a handle of, to make sure that these things are being monitored and consistent across
Right.
every building so that it's being used as it should.
And it's a very time-consuming assessment, right? And so that might be why sometimes it's,
It's not really.
what I'm
Yeah,
hearing.
it depends on the level. I mean, the early
Yeah.
L, usually you give them it's a 1 paragraph thing for them to read, and then, they're good at that level, we're going up to the next, good stuff. So,
Okay.
in 10 minutes, generally.
Okay, that's,
Then-
I've not administered that,
Yeah.
but that's what I've heard from some elementary school teachers, is that the testing takes.
I think at the higher level it does.
It might, because
they're
it's
reading
long.
chapter books and they have to do a lot more of that.
It's longer
response.
passages.
Yeah.
So then the next thing is the MTSS, that multi-tiered systems of support. That is new for RTI. And any student that is not on grade level that needs an intervention, you're supposed to go through this process. It is a good process. Our district has been involved in the MTSS pilot for the state this year. And then, the last thing is I've discussed the different levels of courses based on different.
So I think, just that we're all on literally the same page and also figuratively, going through some of this, we're just where we just had some questions. And so I just want to make sure, so our task is to ask you those questions, right? Right, okay. I just want to make sure that it wasn't just supposed to be something. So you want to start with going through each paragraph here, or do you want to?
Are you talking about the assessment?
Start at, the very first page, statewide assessments. Right. Okay, so I just had a question on 2B, Roman numeral 2B, the NAEP testing. So will be administered each year to obtain an indication of student school performance. What grade levels does NAEP?
It is usually high school, and what happens is the NAEP people randomly pick students. We have to do a random search in PowerSchool and all of that, come up with the names, and they come in and give that NAEP test. It's a
I
national
thought it's
test.
8th grade, not
I
high
was gonna
school.
say middle school does it.
I thought it was 8th grade.
Well, I know when I was in the past, we've always had it at the high school with 1 grade or another.
Okay.
And sometimes it's different grades, so I'm not quite sure.
I do believe that we will take a grade, I think she's.
Okay,
Because it was 8th grade and my daughter was an 8th grader and she was selected.
okay.
It's random samples.
Yeah.
I don't have
Any questions on that? Just under 6, because this is what basically is sent out to parents, right? Ms.
Right.
Allman, so they can understand what's going on in the schools. So under Roman numeral 6, assistance to the students, when it says, each school shall use results of the test administered under the statewide assessment program and a diagnosis of student deficiencies. So I mean, how would a parent know, like, the state test information doesn't come in until the, summertime?
Well,
So-
actually, this past year, it didn't come in until November.
Right.
Yeah.
But when we get that state testing back, we
Mhm.
get copies
Right.
of it. So one goes in the A9, one is sent home just to parents with students. And then depending on what grade level, like elementary is a little bit different than it is at the high school level.
Right.
But there are times when we ask parents to come in and meet with teachers. Teachers have a copy of those, and they're supposed to be having those conversations with parents.
Okay, I was just thinking that since it doesn't come in till so late, that maybe in the future, a little more explanation in that area might benefit parents, because otherwise, as it says, when test results indicate deficiencies, schools shall provide basic instruction to aid the student in bringing his or her performance up to statewide standards. And I just think that
I
sometimes
agree.
is a disconnect.
Yeah.
There's a disconnect that you get those results back, and then they go on to the next grade, and those results are in the A9, and they're not really,
It's not happening.
it's not happening.
I know, I
We
agree.
have kids that have been not meeting expectations.
Exactly,
long time.
exactly my point.
And
Yeah.
then at the high school level, it's better in the elementary school, I think, as far as communicating with parents and all of that.
Yeah.
Even at grade level meetings and things like that for them. Some schools do a really good job and then others don't.
Yeah.
It just depends on the classroom.
Anything?
Is there a plan to regulate that? I know you keep saying, I agree with you, I think that it's very true that some schools, like I just mentioned, that Cedar does a fantastic job with certain things, and other schools don't. Is there a plan going forward? Like, is that what this board, this group is going to work on to unify? I mean,
I
or is
think
that
this
something
group
we-
is going to help a lot because it's going to bring report things to the regular board and we'll systematically work on that. I can do that. The plan for compliance in school is when you have folks that are not doing what you want them to do, you have to talk to them about doing what we want them to do. And some do and some don't. So it's the thing of how far do we go at the district to push that, because there's so much going on at the same time.
And I think part of it too is I do believe with every fiber of my being that teachers, most of them, want to do the right thing.
They do.
But they need support. Because they don't have what they need, whether it's assistance, time in the day, whatever it might be, to make sure that they are in their only 24 hours in the day. Yeah. So to answer your question, yes, just by looking through these documents, it's certainly,
Well, this is, I mean, to me, it's just enlightening to know that this is actually something we are obligated to
Right,
abide by.
Right,
Right.
well, the administrative rules
Yeah.
aren't there
Right.
just for play.
Right,
or
exactly.
for liquidating. That's what we're supposed
But
to be
we have to be
doing.
holding people accountable.
That's the
Right.
key.
and so just by virtue of going through this performance expectation, it's making things bubble up to the top. Okay? Do you have anything? Dr. Blige, did you have a question on page
Yeah, another page it was.
8 of 11? It was Roman numeral 10B.
Sorry, which page is it?
No, we're not there.
Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry, I just was passing through. I saw that you didn't have any.
Oh, yeah. I did have it.
Okay.
We have this expectation in here that parents are supposed to be contacted when a student's grade drops below a C. I just, to me, I think that's critical, and I think that's, I'm not saying it isn't happening, but I would bet it doesn't happen as often as it should,
Well-
and that is something that really needs to be monitored.
Teachers are supposed to have their grades in weekly.
Yeah.
And parents have the ability to go in Power School and watch that. So,
But we can't take the
The
onus.
weekly, I'll be honest, the weekly
It's not.
indicator is not.
it doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
So parents don't find out till they upload everything at the
Yeah.
end. But when you have 38 kids in a class,
Yeah.
And no planning period.
and you're on no planning period, and you're on a
Because you're-
4-block schedule, so you're scrunched to get all that lesson work in.
Yeah.
Excuse
But
me.
that's,
And what about the parents that lacks access to
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be a
Yeah.
phone call.
Yeah.
It should be a phone call.
We do
Yeah.
have phone calls and we do send emails out sometimes too. And a lot of that information is in InfoSnap, and that's where we gather the information from to send it out. So the parent,
Telephones, the numbers are not the same.
You're right.
yeah.
The numbers in
They do
Power
change
School,
them.
you're right, sometimes are not updated at all, so it makes it very difficult.
So always in the fall, we have this big thing, Fritz sends it out on a daily basis almost. Beaver High School is at 70% of participation in InfoSnap. That means 70% of the parents have put the information in InfoSnap, so we have access to the communication. And then you've got Liz here, that's 100% of the InfoSnap, and that communication's going out to everybody.
That's just something that maybe we should be aware of, I think. Now,
Yeah, I know it had to do with somewhere, it was like it was kind of vague about the valedictorian and salutatorian, whatever it was.
8 of 11.
Thank you.
yeah.
Okay.
10B.
It just kind of topic. I have a question though. Can the parents see, I know I've had kids in the schools for 20 years and the youngest graduated in 2015. And Power School, I agree. It was great if the teacher was consistent about putting the grades in there, and it was worthless when a teacher put in all the grades at the end of the quarter or whatever. But my son, that graduated in 2015, he told me that the teacher could see how often the parent accessed the, I think it was Power School, and he told me, "Oh, Mom, the teacher said you accessed it the most." I said, "Yep."
So that's why they're top of the class, because you're on the phone, like me.
I'm not embarrassed at all. Maybe you are, but I'm not.
You should have.
All right, so let's get back to this. So this was 10B, right?
Right.
I just thought it should be, I don't know, better defined about how they determine. So a student and their parents and their family know how that's going to be determined. Are the undergraduates going to be the top 10%? Are they going to be, top 5%? They're going to be the top 10 students? I mean, what is it?
We do it by GPA.
But how do you determine who's an honor student?
The top 10.
Top
10 or 10%.
Okay, there might be things that 2 or 10. I know for the top 10, we take the top 10 GPAs.
Right.
And that's top to the class, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And then,
Does that include ties?
Include what?
Ties. Lots of times kids up there have the same ties.
And for sure, it must.
So it could be a lot more than 10 kids.
It could be. I'm going to tell you, I've been around a long time, and I've never had a tie for the top 1 or 2. I've never had a tie.
Because so many courses they put out.
And see, until that last push of the button goes in Power School, we do not know who is going to be number 1, 2, or 3, or 4, or 5. And so after we push that button, we usually don't do it till every grade is in, everything is in Power School. That's when we push it. And we push it, and I have watched it change on the last push. So it's stressful if you're one of those parents.
Dr. Vaughn, so let's
yeah, so we still, can you please look into that and define, is what I think it should be is consistent at all the schools, all high schools. I don't think it should vary.
What are you asking?
So my question
I
is,
see that.
Okay.
I mean, what are you asking?
okay, so if you look at
I see
10B,
that, yeah.
yeah. So it says the administration will determine the criteria for determining honor graduates, valedictorian, salutatorian, may establish cutoffs, blah, blah, blah. So but I think the parents and the students deserve to know, how do you become an honor graduate?
On our website now,
Yeah.
we have a new online process. It's not just a PDF that you click your pages through. So if you go to instructional services and you click on that, the first thing that will come up on the list on the left is the online catalog stuff. So when you go down into it, there is going to come a time where there is going to be information about how a student is looked at. Well, I'll give this one example. Okay, we had a student that left her senior year and did something different. And, no, not senior year, junior year. So they were gone junior year. One of the rules is you have to be in Beaufort County School District for 3 straight semesters before you can be considered. So those pieces of information are online.
Okay.
Okay.
But back to you,
Yeah.
I work in test prep, so I do a lot of college mission stuff. A lot of schools around the country are going to everybody with a 4.0 and above is called valedictorian. So some schools are having 30 valedictorians. Some, so I think what you're kind of saying is, do we have a consistent thing from one school to the other that says we have one valedictorian, we have one salutatorian, and we are honoring the top 10 GPAs at this school? Is that?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And we actually have had a lot of discussion about that. Instead of recognizing 2 people, we recognize, all of them together, like the top 10 or something like that.
Don't do it. Don't do it, though. The college admissions counselors that I'm connected to all say it just makes the school look weak, that they are trying to bolster everybody's chances of getting into a good school, and it makes the curriculum look weak.
Well, I know that around the state, that conversation is taking place. I don't agree with that. I like to have and if there are 3, yay.
Right, and they're fine with 3. They're fine with 3. They understand if there are 3 people that tied for the highest GPA, they get that, but they have a problem with when you give it to everybody with a 4.0 and above, with all the AP classes.
Right, it's not just
and especially it's not fair around our district with some of the schools having more APs than the others and that kind of stuff.
I don't know if all the schools are using the same program, but Clifton Ed High has traditionally narrowed it down to top 3 students in terms of honorees, valedictorian, salutatorian, and a 3rd honor person. And they do it down to almost a 4th or 5th decimal point to determine who is really number 1. Others kids are lying until the last week to be number 1. And the other thing is top 10 students are also designated the top 10 students in terms of their GPA. Then you still have what I don't know, I thought you mentioned the top 10% of the class.
Well, that's why I was asking for clarification.
Top
What is an honor
10% of the
graduate?
class is also, that's a ratio thing from the grades.
An honor graduate is someone who's had straight A's the entire time. You have to have an A in every class and every report card. That's why there's so few usually at every school.
Like the senior scholars that they have that recently, the students that are senior scholars.
No, not necessarily, because you can have an A with a 90, but everybody else had 99,
But doesn't, okay.
So really, Dr. Walsh, you're just asking that
They're
you're
usually
suggesting
the top
it might be a little more clear to have some more explanation in this area.
I think if you go online and just look,
It is
start to
there,
go
yeah.
online and look and come back with questions or
Sure.
suggestions,
Yeah.
then we could always consider those.
The one thing I will say about the honors thing, to go back to what Vicki was saying, the kids that are taking the regular college prep courses also can qualify for that honor, even though they're not competing in the highest classes. So it's another way to recognize the kids that
worked hard.
worked hard in their class of,
14B3. It says the certified content, this is under cognitive unit credit recovery. A certified content area teacher must develop a program of study designed to address skills and objectives not mastered in the supervised course. Can you just quickly tell us a little bit how credit recovery is at the 6 high schools?
Okay, so there's a thing called you fail a class and you want to recover the credit. Or you're in a class and you're failing and the teacher is wanting to provide an intervention opportunity to bring their grade up before they fail. So there's the before they fail and after they fail.
Okay.
So in Rubicon, which is our pacing for our secretarials, last year, I think it was last year or the year before, Rubicon came in And we tried to take the standards that are in Edgenuity, which is our credit recovery online courses, and they tried to put in Rubicon, like if you're working on Standard 3, where in Edgenuity would you find Standard 3 material? And they would put it in that spot. So if the teacher's got a class of 25 kids, and Johnny over here is really struggling on this particular area, she can look at Rubicon and say, you know, I can give you some extra credit work if you go into Edgenuity on these places and do that. So that is recovering grade, it's recovering a piece of the course.
Okay.
But that's not the final grade. When you fail the course, you can do one or two things. You can go back and repeat the course, or you can go into online credit recovery, which means you take the course over. So what will happen is a student that is mature enough to handle that online piece can work in a class. We usually do the credit recovery in a particular class during the day. And you go in there and you take the course again and you get a grade. Another thing that I allowed at Beaufort High when I was there is we have credit recovery. If we have a student that needs to take the course over, I'm very concerned about that student just being online all day, every day. So I place him back in an Algebra 1 class that he failed. Algebra 1 teacher is there. And if she can actually go back and look at the grades and see the areas that he did very poorly in, the areas that he did well, and she can actually put a plan together using the Edgenuity pieces there to manage that student. So it's the best of both worlds. He's got the teacher support, plus he can use the online too, according to what the teacher.
So all 6 high schools are using Edgenuity for
Yes.
credit recovery.
And that's kind of the state, the state's kind of stamped that as what we should be using.
Okay.
And we did look at several different programs, and at the time I was with that committee, and at the time we felt Edgenuity was the best, but we haven't done it in a couple of years, so that would be something we want to look at.
Okay, thank you.
Although the high school is using the same method, you described what happened to people when you were there, but they're using the same method for credit recovery.
They have the ability to choose to use those same things.
Because I know my experience, credit recovery, looking at it is like, you fail a course, you can take credit recovery in a lab monitored by the teacher. Yeah.
We didn't.
I think that's.
And now, at that time,
And then
At
the
that
river
time.
does it over the summer.
at that time, it wasn't mapped to a Rubicon, so which is a big step, yeah, yeah.
But what about children being allowed to do it at home?
Okay, so I didn't do that. The reason I didn't do that when I was a principal over there is because they can Google answers. I mean, they can go on YouTube and figure out exactly what the answers are. And, I think,
What are some of the schools doing? That's the question.
I'm not sure, but they probably, if they do, they probably make them come back and take the quizzes or the test in with an adult.
That's something that needs to be looked into right now.
Yeah, I think some consistency there.
That is true, they take it on, I know like May Rivers is an example, they'll let them take it over the summer, the class, but then they do have to take the final test for that course in school.
In
when the
school.
Yeah.
And I find that sometimes when, and that would be a good data point for us to look at, if we've got kids that are doing that, because my experience is that we're not very successful.
No, well, if you're not successful in the classroom and have access to a teacher, I don't know how successful you're going to be online.
This fluff pen, this deception, and who does those tests is not always documented.
Yeah, one of my
Yeah.
Well, my question was, I think it may be useless to come up with a consistent philosophy for everyone. What do you think about that? At your place, I think something consistent where everyone need to follow the rules, and either it can be done at home, or even this is how it need to be done, but throughout the district. So therefore, we have consistency, and therefore we aren't having these conversations connected to.
I really would,
Because it's almost like,
yeah, I would-
because it's almost like you're giving certain kids a right in certain areas that you're not giving other kids. And that could be a little controversial, and that could be, we want to be fair and objective to all, and consistent with all kids. So what do you think about that?
Well, I think it would be good if we could all have the same philosophy. But you know, Well Branch looks different than May River. So what Monona has to do to get kids where they need to be may be a little different than what May River needs. So I just want to say, you know, we've
Well,
got
two-
inconsistencies.
Well, too, again, at the end of the day, it's about once we get kids where we need to, the standard had to change. So we need every kid to rise to the standard, whether they're in Wild Branch or whether they're in Bayview. So therefore, in the standard in the world, out there in the real world, ain't gonna change, then that standard didn't need to change. So therefore, the standard needs to be the same and fair and objective to all the children. So we need a one standard, fit all, or something that's consistent, is my suggestion.
So I think, go ahead, Mr. Brown, go ahead.
Especially when it comes to the actual credit recovery process. Now, you mentioned some things that teachers might do Rubicon. That's not a part of the process. That's a part of building the kid.
That is intervention.
The weakness, yeah, that's intervention. Those are the things where they differ, or it can differ from Will Branch. But when it comes to the recovery, that process has to be the same.
Has to be the
Kids
same.
transfer from one place to the next, and they, we didn't have to do that at all. I at the other school, and they trade messages to each other, and we gotta, I was like, Will, that's gotta be a consistent policy of how they get those credits.
There's a lot of things that need to be evened out, across the board, from the cost of a parking spot to having one to all these classes. I mean, it's true.
The more we
There's
dig into
complete
it, the more we
inconsistency, right?
like to do it, but let's focus on the academics.
No, I know, I'm just saying, but from the smallest thing to the biggest thing, there's a lot.
Yeah, the academics, we got to have the same policies from one place to the next. That's a must. And, whereas the message is clear. This is what you do to get from A to B.
I think principals would really kind of like that maybe because they can quit arguing with parents.
Agreed, that
That's
makes
right,
it,
they take it
makes
to
it
the
simpler,
district or the
right?
school
The only
board.
way you can get that credit recovered is through this policy that we have from the board, A, B, C.
Every kid.
Yeah.
Just because we do have a lot on the agenda today, I think just we've bubbled up some things that we definitely need to look at. Are there anything else glaring that's regarding this document here?
Well, I haven't had a chance to truthfully look over the document, but what I will say is was C-time in reference to this document right here?
Yes.
Yes, it's in theirs.
Because I'm having,
Area.
because I'm having a lot of complaints, a lot of phone calls, and what's the consistent method of C-time?
Okay, well, I'm gonna tell you what has just happened. It was 120 hours for every course.
Okay.
And so, when we've got 85 and 95 days, it fluctuates. So, about a week ago, ISD worked on, with Fritz that came up with the final product. It's like a little, it's a document, and you put in the number of days, and you click on it, and it tells you exactly how many lessons they can have. And we just sent it out to all of the schools. Because, when it's 90 days and 90 days, it's all the same, it doesn't matter. But when we start changing how many days, that's part of the problem. So until that happens, there's always going to be a little bit of fluctuation.
Right.
My question about C-time is, how many days are you allowed to be absent? Some of your children are absent 50, 60, 70 days, 80 days. How are they going to make up C-time?
They can't.
They can't.
And there's not
But if
enough
you're
time.
absent that long, you should have a homebound instructor
But
or something.
it's
Something should have been
happening, I'm telling you. It's happening.
Well, that's either truancy or you should have a homebound, and so.
No, but they're absent all these days, and in the last few weeks of school, they can make up all this time, then they.
No.
No, that should not be
But
happening.
that's happening.
Well, you should have, every school
That
should
needs to
have
be reported.
documentation because of attendance, you can pull those reports.
How many days are you
Hours for-
allowed to be absent?
Not many, it's like 5.
Unexcused.
Unexcused.
I know what the answer is.
Yeah.
Well,
It's not 50.
Well, on this, what we need to look into is
If
definitely
we're talking about
growing.
academics, we need to address all
Well,
this.
I just want to add to that as well. Also, for seat time, in the district policy, there's something that says that seat time costs this amount of money, or because the people are saying that some kids are, some schools are charging for seat time, certain schools aren't charging for seat time. What does the district policy kind of?
Okay, so I know for a fact that every school is given tutorial money. And tutorial means teachers that work late or early. And I have never charged children for seat time, personally, but I budgeted it for my tutorial. You know, kids can be, coming after school to make up their seat time, but I bet you 90% of the time, when a kid is making up seat time, it's a lot. They have poor grades. So my expectation is that if we have poor grades and we're making up seat time, why don't we do the same two at the same time? You know what I'm saying? But I think that most schools are given tutorial money, but how they budget that is the decision of the school committee.
Definitely need to look into, there should be a policy, when every school, you know, you're charged or you don't. So, so Ms. Allman, do you need us then to make a recommendation to the full board?
Right.
In order for them to vote whether to make a motion? So do I have a motion from the academic committee to accept PE 1.3? Mr. Campbell, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? So what is your motion?
We are
You're approving
gonna-
this?
We are gonna make adjustments to that, right?
Right, well, I think this says what's being monitored.
That is being monitored, so we
bas-
are,
We're
Well,
gonna, yeah,
that's
that's the discussion.
that's my motion then, that we will continue to monitor. That's what he said.
You're gonna have to add other policies to that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes,
Right.
with some adjustments.
so we will continue to monitor. Okay, all in favor? Thank you. Okay. Ms. Gilbert, the review of textbook adoption, the math and the Kate.
So Mr. Peterson, he is not here for the math, but we have the recommendations to do for that, and this is aimed at the teachers that will need the textbooks. And we also included for them a copy of the information that went out to the teachers, and things like this, that gives some timeline of what courses or what text subject area were up for adoption for this year. And we thought it'd be helpful, while Beaufort County, the state did not bring a caravan for the teachers to review here in Beaufort County this year, we did send out for all the teachers an opportunity for them to go. But the closest one this year was Charleston. And then we thought it'd be helpful that this is a list by publisher of all of the textbooks that were up for adoption for this year. So for this, for us, it was math and career and tech ed specific to computer science and computer programming. So for my part, I wanted to give you a little bit of a background. I'm glad that it stayed included in computer science because
Ms. Gilbert, before we go to that, we're going to just ask a question about the math one.
yes,
Okay, just, so all those, people that were on that committee, they actually looked at it. So, like Mr. Lenz from Beaufort High, they actually,
There's no signatures.
I mean, I just want, my whole thing is their teacher voices. I know the teachers that are actually using, and these look like department heads probably, like
Yeah.
Pete Gervinich, I mean, he's probably a department head, as is Mr. Lenz. Samantha Skirted, she's, I don't know, never mind. So, you know what I mean? Do we know that teachers actually saw this?
yeah, my career in tech ed, yes.
Okay, okay.
They did. I had a list of teachers, specific teachers that were used.
Who is it?
Tina Franklin.
Okay.
She She's a resource.
She's on that?
I think they teach math though.
Gina Franklin teaches a lot of math.
She's math.
Yeah,
Gina Franklin teaches a lot of
She's
math.
mathematics.
Yeah, she's very good, real excellent teacher.
Yeah.
Okay, so, I mean, that's my only question, since I didn't see the signatures. Just, I wanted to, is that the same question you had, Ms. Robine?
I have like a list, but you know, these teachers are working on it, not all at one time. You
Okay,
know, some of them go to the caravan, some of them are looking at the
Oh,
text.
they pass the book around, probably,
Yeah.
that's how they used to do
So
it now.
next year, we're just gonna ask for signatures next year.
well, I mean, it just like there was a signature for something and not for
Yeah.
others, so it made us wonder how come there was some and not for the others, so that's great, okay. So I apologize for interrupting. You wanna- okay.
Before we go, is there something that you have any questions about?
No, the city,
Again, I think give those questions to Mr. Henderson.
yeah.
Yep, as long as the teacher saw it. That's-
Well, on the clearance ahead side, I did seem to get 5 teachers listed, we have their signatures.
Yes, yeah.
I'm so glad that they put the computer science up for adoption. Just so she'll know that, 2 years ago, they embarked on a shift in what we do for kids at the, really 6 to 12, but really it's K-12. But for high school, instead of just learning how to copy and paste a Word document or enter in an Excel spreadsheet, they want the students to come out more with some computational thinking. So there's 5 areas: computing systems, networks, and the internet, data analysis, algorithms, and programming, and impact of computing. So we've had several business teachers over the years who've been great at Microsoft Word and Google Apps. And so now they're having to do a mind shift and switch to more of a, how do I help my students learn how to do a little bit of coding and things like that. So I'm really glad that the state said, let's see if we can give them some resources. So from that list, send it out to the teachers that have been teaching those similar courses. And so their recommendation for the fundamentals of computing was formerly called Exploring Computer Science. The state formally changed that. And I have printed out I'll just give you one copy. This is a sample chapter from that book. I think the teachers made a wise choice. This is an ebook. So most of our business teachers like using ebooks because it has assessments built into it. It has PowerPoints. And so this is just a sample of what that would look like. They've also offered, still come in June, to do some training with our teachers to how to use their software. So that's the recommendation that they went with, which is Cengage. Exploring Computer Science, and it actually tailored it for the standards for South Carolina. So I have those standards listed here in case you need a copy of those. For the computer programming, we only have offered it this year at 2 high schools, Berry Creek and Hilton Head. They're not going to offer it next year at Berry Creek because they're moving this project Leadway Computer Science. Hilton Head, though, they had a great teacher there, and so his recommendation was the computer programming Java in the Cengage. And so he sent good feedback on that. So I put before you their teachers' recommendations to adopt these 2 textbooks for next year.
Is that one also an ebook, or is that gonna be, that's gonna?
Cengage has online supplemental resources.
Okay.
And, but they'll actually do a class.
A class set of that.
The Cengage for the other, the computer science, they said they can come out with a printed copy in June, and put it in the business teachers like
Sure. I think most textbooks are going online, except for maybe some of the math and symbols and so on. So,
ironically, it's still, cost-wise, it's still pretty much the same as a printed book, which is interesting.
okay. All right, so you also need a committee to recommend this to the full board that these be adopted, is that correct?
Yeah.
And this all has provided
Motion?
of the list, and again,
Oh.
Mr. Henderson needs to sign these. There's mind saying that with these teachers attached, this is the books that's elected.
So we can, as a committee, decide to make a recommendation to the full board, which is Tuesday, to adopt this. Okay, so we need a motion in the committee to,
I move that we adopt the, I don't have to words for this, but that we adopt the textbooks, computer programming with Java, and the 3 titles, the big ideas in math, Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and big ideas math, geometry.
And
then it would be a second computer science course.
And exploring computer science for South Carolina. So we've got 5 adoptions, 2 for computers, or for, and then 3 for math. Okay?
second?
Second recommendation.
Vote.
Okay, all in favor? Any more discussion? Motion.
I have a question, it's
Please, no, I
not very relative. How many students, being serviced in these programs, computer programs? You have an idea?
I can be too back first. To that description. It will be, the exploring computer science will be even more for next year because that course will now count as a South Carolina computer science graduation credit.
And they need one of those courses or 2 to graduate?
Just one.
Just one, so that's gonna supplement for what's another computer course.
Yes, sir. I'll get those numbers, roll it to you for computer science courses.
Thank you. All right, and the next one is yours also, the review of the K honors courses.
Yes. So currently, we currently have we currently have 71 courses across our district, 4 subject areas as well as career and tech ed courses that have honors weighted. This was prior to 2017-18. Effective 2017-18, and since you the state honors implementation, and I went ahead and included, I'm just doing career and tech ed, but I went ahead and included, it has the guidelines for all subject areas. Okay. This is a good thing because so like some of the courses that have been honors for a while are theater 1, 2, 3, 4, dance 5. So we would hope that they would be differentiated instruction and there's probably room for improvement, opportunity for growth there. So effective 2017-18, the state asked that if we had any new courses that we wanted to deem as honors, we definitely needed to go through this framework and apply the criteria, and then in good faith effort, try to start looking at the courses we already have as honors to start migrating over to a little more fidelity in this process. So I took this manual and pretty much just condensed. And these areas apply to all subject areas, not just career and tech ed. So you see the content areas that are eligible for honors credit. And then basically there's 3 areas that came across from this new framework. They just want to represent acceleration, enrichment, with some complexity. In other words, not more work for an honor student, but more the type of activity. Right. And I like this, particularly for career tech ed, they say honor really needs to apply to that South Carolina profile of graduate. What are we doing for problem solving, critical thinking skills, being able to work in teams? Is it showing differentiation from the regular level to the honors? and then what type of assessment practices. So it's good teaching, but really trying to help those kids take it to the next level. And there's three main components that, in order to be deemed, who would be audited from the state, what would that look like? And so I listed those components for you: course content, instructional methods, and assessment. And we also have to have a signature page. And then on the last page, so when this came out, we met with all the principals. We worked with them to share counselors. And then for my career as a teacher, we started to meet at the school level with our department chairs. So I have before you two courses. I'm proud of these two teachers. They've worked hard on this. One is for health sciences clinical studies at Battery Creek High School. And the beauty of this, if it's approved, then if there are other schools the following year that would like to have kids have an opportunity for honors, they can. The other one is for sports medicine too. This teacher that submitted is from Bluffton High School, but we have sports medicine at several. And so you have so what our committee, what we did was we said, okay, let's have a common format. So in the future, if you get a math class that they would like to be honors, they would have to put it in a common format that goes back to the elements that are required here. So that'll be a little helpful, more helpful as you're reviewing. And so I did review both the teachers' requests, and so they do meet the criteria that's listed in here. And I asked them, I said, in case our board asks, please provide some examples. So I didn't scan this to you in docs. This is a sports med. He has his syllabus. He has some lesson plan examples, terminology that would be an honors level. This is the Battery Creek teacher. She has her syllabus, scope and sequence. I really like this.
These are all the things that are attached.
Yeah.
That was our question, just to,
yes.
because in this form, if I can just interject here, it says see attached course outline.
Yes.
So that's what we wanted, yeah.
Yes.
Just tell us.
I'll leave this with
Okay.
you, and I can provide this to you online. It's several different documents. But like for the health sciences, I think she's done an excellent job of taking a plain rubric for a portfolio so that when the kids finish their clinicals, they have to present a rubric that if they're going to go for a job, that's included in here. This also then meets the South Carolina profile of the graduate requirements. So I think the two teachers did a great job. I think we will be able to other teachers will be able to take this and duplicate it if they want their students to obtain honors credit.
So this, the health sciences one, they're actually going to go out into the community and have rotations.
Yes, they already are.
Okay.
We have it at Well Branch, Mill River, and Battery Creek. These teachers were asking because of the level of rigor, they wanted the students to be able, if they did the work, to be able to receive honors credit rather than regular credit.
Okay.
A lot of our community big courses are level 1 and 2s, and they're college credit,
Yeah.
they're the regular levels. But our project leadway, our engineering, our principles of biomedical, there's a lot of rigorous standards in there, and so eventually I'd like to see all of our CAPE courses go through this template lens, I guess.
Yeah.
But we'll start with the two. So I'll put
Okay.
those two for your, and this new framework requires the board's, or board chair's approval. So that's why I wanted to
Okay.
create two as figures first for your
Well,
review.
thank you for that explanation, because I actually thought this was going to be then, it's a new course, that it had not been taught before. I thought that it was taking what was currently taught and now taking it to a higher level. So is that correct? Or are you saying that because it already is doing all of this anyway, it deserves the honors designation?
We asked the teachers when they did the training that they had to, if they weren't meeting the criteria here, they might have already had some of that written in there, but to be sure and follow these guidelines
Okay.
and add it. So it's existing courses that have been given college prep credit. They have gone in and tweaked and added to make sure it's going to meet the rigor of this. And then I was going to ask your thoughts on what you see as a good way to monitor, and if we add more, what would you recommend moving forward to make sure that they're doing it with fidelity, I guess?
Is there some, is the sports medicine, and both of these are kind of health science, I mean, a community team of health people or the health, maybe could have the kids present something to them at the end, they're doing these things, and like I'm reading this one, and like it's above my dorsal pedal must be foot, I don't know, is it? And stuff like that. I just think, especially since they're out and they go out, so if they could present their final project or their rubric, something to a little team of people that have some expertise in the medical or sports medicine, I think that would really be a nice little boost to it.
Yeah, I've got some concerns about it. One, what does the regular course look like compared to this honors course? And two, I hope it's not another way to separate the schools into an honors regular program, and all of the quote honors kids are taking this course so that you have just a different approach to the same things. And those would be my concerns. I mean, so often we create what's supposed to be a regular homogeneous setting, and then all of a sudden we break it up into tiers of honors and non-honors, and it ends up being a white, black, or high-level regular thing. So that would be my concern.
That's what you want to
gets
know,
in
because
it? I wanna
everybody
know.
has to do the intro class first, no matter what.
Right.
Everybody, that's language, that's
Right.
what determines that.
Yeah, but determines who gets in. And
My thought with it too is like, everyone has to take English, math, social studies, science. And so to get a 6.0, I had no idea we went up to 6.0 these days on GPA, it's fair, because everybody has to take that, so the students who are advanced are going to get that. Now somebody could go sign up for sports medicine, and that excludes a whole bunch of kids that aren't interested in that, and not going into that in the future, and these kids are now going to be getting 5.0s, raising their GPA up, which is not fair when it comes to the importance of class rank and that kind of stuff.
as an out, but bigger, rigor of the vigor in terms of what they're.
I have no problem with having the courses, I think they're great, but I don't think it's fair that they get kind of higher point for it as the GPA.
Good feedback. What was Walter said, so for the Sportsman 2, we would have to have the college prep Sportsman 1. So that'll help with the continuum. It'll be students who are definitely interested in that path. The clinical study is actually their fourth class. So they'll have health sciences 1, 2, 3, and then the clinicals. So again, a student who's just wanting to bump up their GPA wouldn't be able to pop.
No, I understand that, it's just, but it excludes everybody who's not going into sports medicine having the opportunity to gain that 5.0.
Well, and that'll address what you were saying.
Yeah,
The one
that's-
thing I like is that this would be intermixed. So we would not have, because we have one teacher programs for the most part at our schools. So if I'm a sportsman teacher, this Todd Stewart, he's the one at Bluffton that's presenting this. He's not going to have one section of regular and one section of honors. I'm of the philosophy, so there'll be some kids in there, to your question, they'll all be in there, and however they're scheduled based on their interests and abilities. It'll be up to the teacher to make sure.
It goes back to this, a lot of colleges only use core classes as GPAs. They take everything we send them and factor out, this is going to be factored right out of the GPA, they're only going to look at those cores. And so, I don't know if we should start determining class rank and stuff on that, because this just, and because that's what colleges do, because they know this isn't fair, and this is, I don't know.
Could be an inflated GPA.
That's
Because
exactly
kids
what
are
it
running
does.
to these honors courses with no
Right.
grade load. Also, they're building their grades up, their GPA's up. And we
about
have
the
another
also
kid
other
might be
category
taking
kids where they just
AP
automatically
chemistry is not the same as
Exactly.
that.
Well, that's it, and they're also not necessarily treating that. I mean, we have really overcrowded schools on our next side of the street over here, river, I should say. And my daughter wasn't really given a choice, because you're in a 4-block schedule, and it's like, well, you're high level, so you're gonna take this AP course, because that's what fills in, and even though she has no interest in that.
Is there any criteria that will be added to those courses, like, will they need to have a certain GPA to move into that?
Yeah.
Previous courses, not overall.
That's what I'm
Well,
asking,
but
something
that's a
standard.
good point, but
Yeah.
actually it is a double-edged sword because we're federally funded programs. So we have to be very mindful, all students are open to take our courses. So we have to be very mindful that we don't discriminate. As a matter of fact, we have to offer, if there's an honors, we have to offer the regular CP. That's why I was saying it'll be, you might have some kids who are getting the regular in the same class period with the others. That's why I like the definition of the new framework, because they're saying it's not more work added onto the student. It is a project or a presentation, or I love your idea of they would have to go that extra mile to present to a community of their subject area. I think that'd be a
Let me
great
ask
idea.
you, can this course be used in college? Can this credit, I mean, how does it, I hear some of what you're saying, but it doesn't really seem like there are many pros to it versus cons. That's
Certification.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, that's a trend that our society is going into now. Sports medicine is big because of so many athletes and their
right.
longevity.
But my
So
question is certain credits that you can take with you to college. Is that one of them? Just
It's not dual enrollment. Honors is a level just below the AP or the IB or dual enrollment. So we've got CP, honors, IB, and
Everything else is college.
Based on what I know of the college and my interactions, they're gonna throw that out when they're looking for admissions. It's not gonna factor in. They're looking at court. That's all they really care about.
They'll look at it for interest in their applied major.
Right.
Like if
Yeah.
you're applying for a major in sport medicine, they're
Right.
gonna see, oh, you pursued this.
Right.
Yeah.
It'll go towards passion.
Right.
yeah, and that's
I do like your question. The part of Cleveland principles of biomedical, which is under the health science, that actually can receive college weight for universities that recognize it if they meet a certain score on their end of course test, because it's a national test that we take. So some courses, career and technical courses can count as college weight, but typically it's the project collegiate weight. This is very good feedback. I can get back with the teachers, because this is important before we embark on this. Because as you may know, my heart is with the college prep. You're good, well in culinary, those kids that have those opportunities. I do know that we do have students who go on to college before university as well. And so I think these teachers were just saying, you know, how can we help attract those students? Because there's so many things out there for them to take. That if they truly want to go to be a doctor or a physical therapist, they have their counterparts taking all the honors weighted courses, and sports med is a great, good foundational skills. So I'll be glad to, we're okay if you don't want to make a recommendation to pass on, but yeah, they're already scheduling, so what I suggested to them, go ahead and do your regular course codes, and then if we decide we want to move forward with this next year, we can just move over the students that we get now later.
Since they're gonna be combined classes
Yes,
anyways, yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Dr.
No
Wise,
worries.
so in the past, when we've approved courses like this, there was always prerequisites, but I don't see that, like we just touched upon that. Why are there not prerequisites here if it's an honors course?
We've never done this. This is brand new for the new honors framework. So this will be the first time that we've presented to the subcommittee board for approval for honors moving forward for the state board's requirements. As far as prerequisites, I hear what you're saying. You think that might be helpful to
On this
include
rubric.
in this template. Yes, ma'am. I see what you're saying. That is not a problem. That would be good.
Okay.
Just so we can add another line there. It says, prerequisites, sportsman one, yeah, I got you. No worries, we'll add that.
So I think that's probably a good idea. Did you want to say anything? I'm sorry.
Yeah, other things I want to say, one of them was about the prerequisites. Do you have to have sport med one to go into advance?
We'll add
Right,
that.
that's a criteria, so that kind of funnels it into a small set of people.
Yes, sir.
But the other thing I was gonna make a point of, all the courses that our children are gonna be taking in high school now are not going to be directly related to a liberal arts 4-year college program. In fact, a lot more is happening out there than that. And sport medicine and this type of thing is one of them. They're going into, alternative education and getting prepared for what the real world is offering. So that's some of the thought pattern in terms of what they're offering. I like the idea of sports medicine because there's so much stuff you can do in sports medicine today that, leads to a certain amount of professionalism.
If I may go back to your original question, how many students do we have currently taking computer science? We're glad to provide these figures, the data of how many kids we currently have in sports med, and how will that impact if they come to honors for that year?
Because
Yes,
Okay,
that'd be great.
what it also do, and administrators, I'm sure you run it past the administrators, but her point, it changes up the dynamics of courses being offered and students and teachers needed for slots. Because that sports medicine teacher is teaching something else now in the spot that he or she is proposing to teach sports medicine too. And it's another slot.
We'll hold off and we'll get a little more detail on this. Thank you.
Thank you. I had asked Mr. Otting, Ms. Crutchfield to be here because we are circling back to talk about the viability of K-8 schools in Beaufort County School District. It started out last fall with an ad hoc committee from the previous board to look into it in the Hilton Head area. From what we have come to understand, Ms. Robine, Mr. Campbell, and myself, is that there was interest in the Hilton Head area to have a K-8 school. There is a K-8 school, Robert Smalls is not a true K-8, but it's somewhat of a K-8. And then, of course, River Ridge Academy, so that would be blocked in, and that would be north of Broad. So what about the Hilton Head area? To that end, the three of us met with the three principals at Hilton Head Island School for the Creative Arts, Hilton Head Island Elementary, and Hilton Head Middle. And we were there for probably 2 hours. And they shared with us what they had done last fall as far as looking at numbers and so on. So I did ask Mr. Otting and Ms. Crutchfield to be here to continue this conversation. Ms. Allman had given us a presentation at one of our meetings about the educational impact of K-8 schools. And the takeaway from that presentation was that, yeah, there are some really great things about K-8 schools, but as far as an educational advantage, not so much. Maybe just the advantage would be one less transition. However, research also shows that middle schools offer maybe more opportunities to middle school students than maybe a K-8 school could. So since there was no strong educational reason to have a K-8, and we met with the principals, their impetus last year was numbers. Okay, how to alleviate some of the overcrowding in Hilton Head Island Middle School and so on. Looking at this year's numbers, what they shared with us, though, is that there's been a decrease. So what we need to know is the viability. I mean, is that still a reason to continue to look at K-8 schools in the Hilton Head Island area? And then we also need to judge the community interest in having a K-8 school. So that's really what today's conversation is going to be about, as well as maybe looking into what about the Wheel Branch area? Do the numbers support that? Would there be community interest in a K-8 school in the Wheel Branch area?
I don't think so. It's not going to change. Not at Whale Branch.
No.
Well, that's what we're having this conversation about. And what about Ladies Island Middle area? Ladies Island Middle is underpopulated. And so would it would the schools that are surrounding that, would it be better served? So it's kind of an open conversation right now. Do you want to add a little bit more about the meeting we had with the
I
principals?
think, you know, some of the things that were discussed
Go
at
ahead.
the meeting were, you know, you've got no, at this time, you don't have, continuity for the creative arts.
That's what I was
We
gonna
have
say.
the
Because
continuity,
that's all-
we have the continuity for the IB, but not the creative arts. But then listening to the ladies talk and the new principal at the middle school seems to be more in tune with the related arts, with the creative arts. And
Absolutely.
she's like talking, like, you know, maybe, you know, she was kind of like, I think we can do it, we can keep it the way it is and make everyone happy, is what she was seeming to indicate.
They had a concert recently.
Yeah, but-
Yeah, I was gonna say, I have a lot of
Yeah.
feedback
Yeah,
on that.
but, I mean, that was just, that's how the conversation.
It was
enrollment is down because parents are pulling their kids. That's why enrollment is down. They're
And
not
that's-
happy with the start times. They're homeschooling. There's a whole lot of people homeschooling, and they're going to other schools.
And the main drive for this K-8 is the dissatisfaction with the middle school.
Right.
It's terrible.
And also, the other thing is, just because we have one
Teachers just stop
successful
feeling
principal in
safe.
place right now, doesn't mean that person is gonna be there forever, and we can't establish schools based on the
Based on
person.
the person.
And
Right,
she's
right,
headed in the right
right.
direction,
That's
but there's a
my
whole
big
lot that
thing.
needs to be
Right.
fixed.
And I was there during all of that, and I know Vicki was too, and all those meetings and all those conversations, and it wasn't just that, I mean, there was also a continuity problem in IB. I know there may not be so much now, but they were saying there was a huge lack of communication between the middle school and the elementary. And they just could not, that gap was so huge and they couldn't fill it because there was just no communication that was going on and continuity in that educational piece with those kids that were, there's a large ESOL as well as the dual language program. So they had talked extensively about that and that continuity was gonna be a bonus to them in one building. So, you know, I think, yes, they probably have a great working relationship with Frida now because she's been around forever and everybody knows her, but, you know, that doesn't necessarily mean that there aren't other educational benefits that could be happening in the formats they're discussing. I think a lot of these kids get lost in that transition, and we've talked about that. There's a huge social emotional piece, and that consistency is, I mean, that's what makes, look at the growth at Robert Smalls International that's happened. Because even with them coming in halfway through the year, you're halfway through the educational piece, right? Because not all of them are there
Right,
from the
that's-
beginning.
That's why it's not a true.
Right, well, they still consider it a true K-8.
Yeah.
If you look at the definitions Bonnie presented,
Yeah.
I don't care for that model. I think that model is not ideal, and I hope that the district will discuss changing that, because I think there's a crowding issue in other schools, and that could be alleviated by making that continuity. But to me, the parents that I talk to, just like hearing from them, say the same things that they're representing all the time, and
My
it's true for,
children will not go to Hilton
Yeah.
Hospital unless they're gifted in town.
yeah,
I'll tell you that right
My
now.
daughter is
two
Unless
different
what?
worlds.
Unless they're gifted in town.
They said
Because
it's
then
two
they get-
separate communities.
It's two separate communities, and then they don't have to deal with violence. I mean, my nephew has been punched twice sitting at his desk in 3 years.
And then I hear that that's the stuff that I hear a lot from parents, and that it's, and I'm gonna tell you this as parents, I had a kid, my kids went to, RRA for 2 years or whatever when they transitioned, from OPT and then from Bluffton Middle, and my littlest one went there for a few years. There's still issues in a K-8 school, like you're not gonna alleviate
Right,
all
right.
discipline problems, I mean, it still happens, and in RRA in particular, it's a huge school, and I think that number needs to kind of come down a little, because that leads to problems too, which is what's happening in your middle school too, because you have
Two
large
small
numbers,
communities and they
yeah.
come together.
But the difference
You
is,
think
in
of
River
it one way, but
Ridge,
eight.
Yeah.
in River Ridge, the difference is those gifted kids are intermingled in the community with those other kids. So those kids are getting that contact to benefit the correct model, right? Those kids put in the effort, they're modeling good behavior, and they're interacting with those kids on a regular basis. Whereas with the other format, they're segregated. It's like two schools within a school. It's almost like Montessori at River Ridge, which is they're not part of that school really at all. They don't engage in the same award ceremonies because Montessori doesn't have awards. So they're segregated in some ways, and it's the same way with that gifted program versus the traditional educational system. And I believe, and I think that you would agree, I think that doesn't benefit all of the kids. I think they all need to learn how to interact with each other.
Studies show it's best for gifted
So you're
kids, but
saying-
it's not good for the other.
Right, so you're
Okay,
saying,
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
so
Yeah.
you're saying that there's violence in Hilton Head Middle School?
Yes.
Oh,
absolutely.
Yes, terrible.
So some children are stuck there. They have to go there.
Yeah.
So what do you do to change the
Right.
violence? That's my question.
Okay, before we go on, and you know, it'd be very helpful to me if could you just introduce yourselves
Oh,
and say, you know, where your kids are or what, you know.
My name is Shirley Brown Perry, and I'm from Dale. I live in Sheldon Township.
Okay, thank you.
The school is the Wheel Branch Cluster.
Okay.
What are we going to do with those children that's in that violence, that are not fortunate to come out of the violence?
That's right.
I'm Connie Pratt, and I live in the Health Cluster. I have a second grader at Great Arts and a fifth grader who's a rising sixth grader. And we're gonna maybe give it a shot, but I mean, it's not gonna take much to pull her. And she is in the GT program. And they do segregate. I mean, the sixth grade is one area, seventh grade is one area, eighth grade is one area, but it's, very.
My name is Vicki Watts, and I have 2 second graders at Creative Arts.
I'm Amanda Walden.
And Mr. Camber, you wanted to say something? Thank you.
A couple of things. I think one of the big things you hit on is the discontinuous education of the creative arts program and the middle schools. And I mean, you say, Frida said that they would fuse it in, and that's what I heard her say that. But at the same time, you know, the results of no arts in that program and no continuity for the arts children has not been adjusted to, not been approached at all. And what happens to those children in terms of their continued education is not documented. Nobody looks at those children who didn't get art from 5th grade to 9th grade, and now they just survived that middle school, and that's a tough time. No matter where you are, no matter, you know, let's talk,
They all have challenges.
they're tough, because, not just because of the academics, but because of the children and their age, right? Things have changed, and, you know, but what happens, we haven't done a good job of documenting that IB student, the gifted and talented student, and the creative arts students through that middle school.
So it was mentioned that the numbers are going down because of students being pulled, but can you guys speak a little bit to the numbers?
No, you've already pulled it out, go ahead.
Well, a couple things are going on in Hilton Head. So yes, Hilton Head Middle is decreasing. So we have right now they're at 102%. Next year we're anticipating them to be 98. They're going to for the next 5 years they're above. So the lowest they get is 4 years from now at 93%. So they are not. Yeah, they're going to be at capacity. What we've been seeing over the last few years that I'd say I don't know the answer to is that Hilton Head Middle and Hilton Head High School have been saying steady or increasing, while Hilton Head Elementary has been decreasing. What we've been seeing is a decrease in elementary kids in Hilton Head. So what we've anticipated is that decrease in elementary kids will funnel up into the middle and high. We haven't been quite experiencing it. What we've been seeing is at the elementary level, there's a decrease in kids, and for some reason they come back in middle and high. Kind of opposite to what your concerns are, but the numbers have actually said that we're getting, but the trend recently is the elementary now is coming back up. Or the last year, elementary is showing signs of coming back up. So to answer your question, Hilton Head, middle and high are full. They will be full. Elementary's got space. It's starting to grow. I guess that's the summary.
And that's kind of what started some of the K-8 conversation on Hilton Head, was really about making best use of space. Because really, this conversation started way back in 2017. We've been doing this for quite a while. And it came up as, what are some of the options to use available space on Hilton Head? And there was a K-6 discussion, there was, creative arts just becoming the pre-K-8, or not pre-K, it's a 1-8 actually.
1-8,
Yeah, actually, it's
yes.
1-8 on Hilton Head. Or both elementary schools becoming and, eliminating the middle school completely, and, changing up the facilities. Just if any of those options occur, there's gonna be cost involved with changing facilities. Because some of taking the elementary building, you would have to.
The easiest
add
is converting
things.
Hilton Head Middle to a 1-8. That doesn't take a whole lot. Converting an elementary school to a 1-8 will take a lot. And that just creating lab spaces. And SCA, we've done models and looked at how you can convert SCA to a 1-8. It just has small classrooms and there's some difficulties in that. And we've never done that cost analysis to see exactly what that will cost if we go down that road. It will be several $1 million. There's no doubt about it. What the exact number is, we don't know.
The other thing, in that scenario with just creative arts becoming to be 1-8, it was limiting the enrollment. So it was becoming the choice school. And then elementary is the default. So you would limit the number of students per grade. I can't remember, 80 students. 80 students per grade across the board. And then it may have been 100. I can't, I had thought, something like, anyway, we had to adjust those numbers. And that was still putting quite a few kids in there. That was pretty much maxing them out, their capacity with 100.
Yeah, we have their enrollment numbers from when we
Yes.
met. When we met last week, Creative Arts has 668, and Hilton Head has 888, and the middle school had 1020. So, we added those all up, divided by 2, like if we were gonna make, and those are 2 big schools.
Oh, yeah.
They are bigger than River Ridge.
I would also be interested in looking into how many of the problems in middle school stem from these kids coming from 2 schools and not coming up together. I come from Michigan, and I was in a town where 2 middle schools fed into the high school, and they determined it was a problem and eventually went to a 5-6 school and a 7-8 school, so that all those kids were together all the way up. And I believe that it ended up being more of a positive change. I left after it happened, but I'd be interested in looking into that too and seeing if that's some sort of an option to kind of.
Most of the other clusters, multiple elementaries feed into a middle
I get
school.
that, but
Yeah.
we're, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's our high percentage of ESL students. I don't know what it is, but there's something that leads.
I don't think it is, because those parents complain to me too.
I don't
And you've
know
got
what
similar
it is.
demographics at a couple of areas in Bluffton, so where we're not really seeing that.
The demographics are important to the development of the early childhood education on Hilton Head Island is all different depending on your social economics. And you start off with 2 different types of schools, and then you got kids fusing in from the private sector, like the Catholic schools and Montessori's and stuff like that. They filter in, and they have been coming in at the middle school. The middle school have had successes in the past. Now they're coming in, just recently, the middle school, very little success, kind of, discourse between the articulation and the elementary school children, teachers and principals, and the middle school. So that kind of break the back of the middle school. It didn't take much. It doesn't take much. That continuity is not there, and you feel a different anxiety, and the principal takes one side versus the other, or not, skillful enough to handle that. Could be a problem, but I still think that we'd be years trying to figure it out and solve it from a physical standpoint and an academic standpoint. So, and it will, I disagree, but it will matter who is teaching and who is the principals and the person having an understanding of the process and who we have there. Because that's what it's going to take, and we have to sort that out from our information And those administrators that are there now, they seem to think that it's almost impossible to try to go into, 1 through 8. It's almost impossible. So their
It's impossible.
suggestions.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just not, I mean, the negative attitude about this whole thing starts with the administration and it trickles down.
Yeah.
It really does, but it's not impossible, and we need to change the attitude.
Well, what about there was
Their
previous board
suggestions.
discussion about magnet schools too, and throughout the district coming about at some point. What about treating the creative arts having that school be more of a magnet arts program? They have them in Savannah, they have them in surrounding areas. And the kids that are in that school apply to get in, essentially, not just a 50-50 split when you register, because it's not really a true choice, because anybody on the island can choose any school. You don't have to
Right.
put in an application.
That's what they say.
But maybe something like that, where the kids that are gonna be in that program are truly invested in that program. I don't know that would, you're still gonna have the numbers issue.
Well, the
But you could
You have to cap it, that's the
The
only way.
concern's gonna be you get a
Transportation.
small elite school, and then you would have a large.
Well, it's not necessarily elite, because we're not talking about academics. You could call it an arts magnet, it could be arts. It's not necessarily, you're still gonna have gifted kids in academics and who are also artistic, and kids that are lower achieving that happen to be incredibly artistic.
Man, that's what you have now, except you don't have any support.
But it's not.
And you don't have any support in that system
Right.
for kids beyond the 5th grade.
Right.
And in theory, that's what we're supposed to have. But in reality, in the past, the children in the creative arts program have been the low academic kids, except recently, more gifted and talented kids are more directed toward the arts. But the stigmatization of the program by the district and everybody else who's supporting them, wouldn't allow for continuity. There's no 7th grade, there's no 6th grade art program. So where does the child find himself, particularly if he's not, have not found
And
themselves
these
in
are the
art
kids
yet?
that are falling in the gap, though, Mr. Campbell.
I
These are
agree.
the children that fall in the gap, and we have a lack of continuity also even in our K programs. To be honest, I noticed on your 5-year plan that you were gonna put the aerospace program on Hilton Head, but, RRA has aerospace right in their middle school, and then they lead to a school that doesn't offer it. Why?
Yeah.
And
that's
so,
kind of
and
stuff.
parents complain about that a lot. They're like, well, you could do this, but then you can't do anything, you can't finish it.
Yeah.
So we have to look at the continuity with whether it's the arts,
Yes,
whether it's medicine, whether it's whatever we're looking at.
That's
Immersion,
correct.
language
Immersion,
immersion.
yeah.
Language
Right.
immersion is also.
One of the
Yeah.
things on Hilton
Yeah.
Head that
We
those of us
talked
in
about.
creative arts complain about too, is you have IB, and they go on to high school IB,
Right.
and, they're
Yeah.
getting
Middle
this,
school,
Yes.
our
NYP.
kids, the gifted kids come up and they're like, okay, we got rid of AP, what do we do now? And they try and put them into IB, but they haven't had the background of
Right.
their children.
Right.
And just the same with the language, the kids at IB have done the Spanish immersion. Now Spanish is the only thing that's gonna be offered at the
Right.
middle school next year, we just found out. And then the kids at Creative Arts have not had that, so.
Right.
They're already at a disadvantage now.
Yes.
What's your feeling, one of the things that we talked
That's not
about
right.
Great.
was
Preferring was gonna put some
when in
specific-
8th grade, one of the stumbling blocks is that 8th grade, can take high school courses. And it's hard, when you just have a handful of kids, to offer that in 2 places. We talked about
They
walking.
walk from-
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
I
mean,
did,
there's no reason why we
It
can't-
sounds like we need more communication, more actual interaction between the 2 elementary schools would be good. If the principals could work together to somehow make that happen.
I know those 2 principals talk to each other.
I know they do. They're awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, one of my concerns also too, and I asked Mr. Otting about this, is if there is going to be a referendum, on that referendum is a Hilton Head Island Middle School renovation.
Right.
Well, if we are going to consider it become a 1-8 school, that renovation was way different. And so, can you talk, you provided an answer as far
Well,
as
as far
the
as,
design stage,
The only way that works is if both schools become one.
Right, you would have to make one of the other ones.
yeah, so what the number is in it right now is for improvement to the middle school and enlarging classroom spaces. But what I was telling you is that for the most part, if changes are made at the middle school, that could be incorporated in that design. So, I mean, you could change the focus of the design at the middle school to make it a K-8, let's just say. The numbers will probably come close, there may be some discrepancy, but that could be worked out. What wouldn't be included is modifications you have to make at elementary. So, I mean, and that could potentially be, if you did go that road. So if you went that road, I'd say at the middle school level, we're pretty much covered. There aren't major, you may have to add some restrooms, smaller toilets and things to that building, but those are costly, but not as costly at, say, well, it's costly, it's in a number range that we can incorporate into the money we already have there. At the elementary school, there's nothing there this time. So that would just need to be somehow addressed.
What is the lifespan of those two elementary schools, Robert? When were they built? I mean, because I know we were talking about rebuilding probably small ones.
Well,
What is the lifespan of those buildings? Are they 60 years old yet?
No.
Everything
That's not what I want to know.
1983.
Yeah. 83, okay.
There is, the oldest
Well, I
building
mean,
is in the 70s.
Okay, but
And
so
what
a
school
school building to be built is supposed to be built for
What
50
school is that, Robert?
Talking about Hilton Head School.
Yeah, Hilton Head, yeah.
I would say, what's the oldest school in the district, actually?
74.
Oldest
No,
one.
it's
Royal.
That's just getting up there. The 74 for creative arts, that's my age.
Yeah, so 70, so yes, Creative
And
Arts.
elementary.
The second oldest after Port Royal? I don't, probably Broad River.
Yeah,
Broad River,
I was thinking, yeah. We had to visit that school.
But we've renovated that.
Mr. Campbell?
263, Ladies Allen now, Pasio.
Yes, Mr. Campbell?
You said y'all talked to the three principals, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. What about parents? What do parents say?
Right, well, we're just reinvigorating this
Yeah,
whole
yeah.
concept, so that's why, Ms. Robine reached out and said, we're starting this conversation.
And these parents were involved
And
before.
they're very interested, definitely interested in it, but like I said, I feel a lot of the interest stems from fear of the middle school.
But my question is, when I hear y'all say fear of the middle school, and then also you said it starts in leadership. Is there something with the leadership? Is there a leadership issue, or is it the children of the school? I mean, like
No,
what?
I'm saying that we're talking about the competition between the schools and how maybe they could somehow integrate them more, have some, we don't have any activities.
When you say activities, like what kind of activities?
I don't know. Yeah, I know, right? Like, we have a huge,
Or a shared science fair, maybe it's a shared science fair,
like a big pep rally for the elementary kids,
Just to make them
something
feel
like
more
that.
part of the same campus instead
Right.
of like two
Because
separate.
they're connected, the buildings are connected, but there's no connection.
Well,
I mean,
I mean,
it's,
But I
The
think
line
the
is-
leadership, like you're referring, the leadership has changed at Hilton Head Middle, so a lot of people have high hopes for that. Are we seeing changes yet? No. I have a nephew there now, and I've drilled him on
She
it.
hasn't been there long.
Let me say
If I could say, the conversation in the past was stemmed, you had the middle school, there were concerns about the leadership, it was overcrowded. And middle school's a tough age, so you put a tough age kid in an overcrowded building, it's way overcrowded, and then you question the leadership, that's a recipe for problems.
And you don't have continuity in their education either.
Yeah.
That was the other piece. So now you have a bunch of kids that are
We
lost.
just need, one person, I'm sorry, what did you say?
Person that had never been principal.
Okay.
And then, talking Hilton Head, everything is scrutinized on Hilton Head.
Yes.
Every little element. So those things led to failure. And now, it's gonna take years before that's true.
Correct.
You know that. It's gonna take years. You're
Oh,
gonna
yeah.
replace all of those children that are there
Right.
with new children. So about 3 years, probably, you'll see a different middle school.
On the
And
facility
the
side,
dynamics are changing.
it's gonna be crowded, but we've gone, the peak was this year, actually. I mean, so the peak capacity, from what we see, it's gonna start shrinking. It's still gonna be full. It's still probably our most crowded middle school, I think, outside of River Ridge. So you're at a difficult age, and it is the most crowded one we have. But it is coming down.
But not drastic. I mean, it's still 93%. 85 is ideal.
Yeah.
Well, my
So,
concern
wait,
was.
Ms. Robine had her hand up.
Okay, so I'm thinking there, we need to have more conversation, and this would take a couple of years to do. But in the meantime, I think you ladies have come up with some ideas of how we can kind of unify those two elementary schools. And based on our conversation with the principals, I would think that
They would be
if
on
we
board.
went to
Yeah,
them and
yeah,
said,
yeah, they're
let's,
wonderful.
how about a shared talent show, or how about, now,
Right.
you don't want to set up
Right.
something where it's competition between the two, but some shared activities, like
We're inviting them to, like when we do our Christmas performance at Shelter Cove, inviting them.
Yeah, or
just stuff like that,
Particularly, I
they
think, in
inviting them.
fifth grade too.
Yes,
Yes.
if we
They're
could-
getting ready
You
to.
know,
Right.
what about, okay, most schools that I've ever been involved in, we have buddies, and the fifth graders are buddies with the first graders, and they read to them. And what about fifth grade buddies
Pen pals,
across the schools?
Right.
Something like that, so they get to know each other. So some of that is taken, I mean, these are just things, that in the meantime,
That
while
could at
we,
least help the, into the
Yeah,
sixth grade transition.
so, maybe
The
we can
anxiety.
have some discussions, to some stopgap, or some, in the meantime, things while we
Right.
do this other stuff.
And well, my question was just there because when you said it was dangerous, and and is does that middle school do they have an SRO there?
I think they share one.
Yes.
They share with the middle school, right?
So they have.
Yeah.
We've always had an SRO.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, that's all.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, when we start speaking
One
about
person
danger.
in a,
From
little
what
girl
I
went
understand,
out to the
what I would do
bathroom.
is I would
mean,
start
it's
talking to
crazy.
parents who have had the experience with it. From what I understand, if the child fights back, they're immediately suspended, so it's a.
That is true.
Bullying.
It's bad, it's really bad, and they don't do as much as they should to the offenders, is what we're hearing.
Well, I think that's changing. I think under the previous principal, and teachers were leaving in droves, and they were saying they didn't feel safe. They were not supported by their administration. So I think that has been a big change for the better with Pat Frida for sure. But again, there's so much badness ingrained that it's going to take a few years to get it. Where it needs at least a few years, I would imagine, to get it. My kid's not going to be the guinea pig for this. So this is a very short experiment. We'll see how it goes. But
Same time.
my trigger is
The dynamics,
Ready to
the
go.
demographics
Yeah.
are changing too.
Yes, the
At the
demographics
same
have
time,
changed a lot.
the demographics have changed dramatically, so that's another thing being phased in. You add that to the discontinuous program and middle school children, you've got that's a formula for failure. It's a formula for failure. Those kids come in there and there is nothing to do except vent your frustration on the other job. And that's how
Definitely
serious
some
it is.
cultural
Yeah.
things that come into play with it, for sure.
Right, so those are some of the things that we have to address. My first thing in my mind is, how do we phase more arts into the middle school program? How do you interface the art in the IB elementary kids with the creative arts? Because they have certain components of IB that are art related, but all that could be maybe some combined courses, and they get a chance to intermingle.
Right, and
All
that's,
of those things are, I think, direction we may need to go in.
and
Not
that's
to
what,
build new schools, because we don't have the money, and don't even introduce that in this referendum, or you really don't have a field referendum.
But I think one thing, as you look at whatever renovations occur there at the middle school, if it needs to become more art focused, I mean, really, they only have those two little art rooms. Kind of sad. Maybe that arts area gets revitalized and becomes more of a focus, so that you've got
Yeah.
space to do the programs that you need to do for the continuity, so that by the time they get to high school, they've had introduction to pottery or whatever the course
And I would
needs
recommend
to be.
that some of the culture changed for those creative arts students coming in. Creative arts is very, I don't want to say lax, but it celebrates creativity. If a kid forgets about, it's not the end of the world. These are my kid wears his shirt backwards half the time. And I swear he's smart, he's just super creative, and he's always going. And I think they get to middle school and it becomes boom, 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 and that's a
Yes,
very
true.
hard.
And our
thing.
shirts are any color of the rainbow, as long
Right,
as it's
Yeah.
a
and I think
colored
it's a
shirt.
very
And if
hard
you have a little
adjustment.
something on there, it's fine, just
It's
stick a little button,
killing,
you know, whatever.
it's killing
It's
those
much
kids.
It is, it's very hard for
They're
them to suddenly
rendered
fit
useless
into
now,
where it's
for
been,
3
you
years.
know, be there more regimented, you know. Yeah, so it's been hard.
Well, here it was like, be yourself, be
Yeah,
everything. Now
the all
it's,
the
we have to
things
fit
we
them.
want them
Right.
to.
Right.
At a
believe.
time when they already feel completely out of place. By the way.
Yes,
Right.
right.
A lot of the conversation that we had in this 2 hours with the three principals was exactly like Mr. Campbell just suggested. There's a real interest from Pat Frieda to open and loosen it a little bit and bring some more of the arts in.
Yeah.
And actually, Dr. Owens was also discussing how, you know, in the world like of humanities, that is art and social studies combined. And so she's looking toward that.
International Festival joint.
Right.
You guys do the art component, they do the.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Plus that language immersion
Yeah.
right in that festival. I mean, there's
That's the first
so many amazing, you know, ways
That would
to
be a
make
great
that
way to
happen.
integrate them.
You know, because when you do have feeder schools going to a middle school that are so different, but that is the case in most of our middle schools in the county. You know, you've got these different choice schools that have kids growing up, they come to a middle school, and it's a clash. And so the joyful thing about Hilton Head is the proximity of the two elementary schools to each other, that they could start to do this, as compared to other areas where you have miles in between the elementary schools. So it's almost, I mean,
Well,
it's
our
very
elementary
hopeful.
schools have gone through a million transitions.
I
mean,
bet.
We've gone from blue building, red building, yellow building, like,
I
you
saw
know.
it there back then.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
totally periodic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been a lot of change, but.
So let me ask the community members, are you thinking that there is a great deal of interest to pursue the 1-8? Or is there a feeling abounding that with the new leadership at the middle school, that it's willing to, no, so we're still.
I mean, I am hopeful after attending the parent meeting,
Mhm.
and I knew Pat Frieda from many, many years ago when she was a math teacher at the middle school, so I have a lot of faith in her personally, but I think overall, there's not a lot of
And I
faith
just
in the
think-
middle school, and I mean, 1 through 8 schools, we need one. I think there's a lot of interest in it. I think there would be a lot of interest.
And I
in
just
it.
think we can't rely on that one person, like we were just saying.
Right,
absolutely.
I
exactly.
can't
No,
rely on
you're
one
right.
person. Now, what as an intermediary thing though, I think the ideas that you talked about merging them into some project, and I really think international studies would be, or a festival would be awesome, where you can do that jointly. They can partner with kids from the other school and each take a country. That would be huge. But that would be huge. And then on top of that, you start working on the middle school to incorporate the arts or whatever you need to do to accommodate those kids in the meantime. Because we know that we're gonna have this, a referendum committee, whatever, I can't say, thank you. I can never remember what they call it. I kept calling it construction committee and I get criticized for that. But anyway, they had $629 million worth of needs. None were wants. And they can't even put that forward because it's way too large for our community to accept. So I think we have to look at this as a 5-year, 10-year plan. We can't look at this as, yes, we're gonna, unfortunately.
A lot of homeschooling in my future.
Yeah, but the reason I'm saying that is because we have schools, like when you listen to the committee members talk, we have
Right.
schools on the other side that are like the roofs, like literally, I know that
Yeah.
Mr. Payne was criticized for that, but they are literally falling in. I mean, they're raining through, and we have to make those schools equitable.
I know Mr. Campbell wanted to say something, and I also just want everybody to know it's 6:20, so
Right.
if you, this is great conversation, but I know that,
My comment is this: I would think that the committee should sit down with the parents and hear from them, and also when a new superintendent comes in, get some input from him
right?
and move from there.
I mean, really, this is very frustrating because this committee has started and then it flailed and then so we're starting it up again, and it would be nice maybe if we weren't at the end of the agenda next time. And again, the start times, and I know that's being addressed by a different committee, but the reason the elementary enrollment is down is because of the start times. And I will
What would be a good start time for
the
you?
middle school Well, I'm telling you right now, anything that puts a 4 or 5-year-old on a bus at 5:55 in the morning is not working for anybody. So 8:45 would be great. And the older kids need to start before the younger kids. So whatever times you gotta figure out to make that happen, because this is, you're creating more latchkey families.
And that's one of the reasons
And
people are
people are
interested
pulling
in
their
the
kids.
K, because then we could have our own start time if we did that. you know?
Right.
Well,
And
operations,
I have a neighbor, the
operations, we are working on
The
that.
the math teacher at Hilton Head Middle sent his son, who is in 4th grade now, they're homeschooling now, but he was going to River Ridge. He lives on Hilton Head Island in Victoria Square, and their kid went to River Ridge rather than send his kids to Hilton Head schools
Because of start time?
because of start times and
Another
but yeah, that's a So if you, I mean, if we had, that could potentially help other schools if we had our own 1 through 8 school.
I understand your frustration because this did start back in October and so on, and here it is May, the end of the school year. But we, just got this started
I know,
again.
it's brand new board, but it's
Yeah.
the same thing with the start times, and we're 3 years into this
Yeah.
failed experiment and nothing's happening, so.
Well,
It's very frustrating.
We've been on this roller coaster since our kids, for at least 3 years
Yeah.
now.
We're
So
gonna
that's,
work
that's
towards it.
I mean,
why-
my daughter was
The other
at the
committee
school,
is-
we had the
Yeah,
8:45 start time,
Right.
and it was
I
was there,
wonderful
yeah.
to
I
have that
pushed it.
taken away and seeing the effect that it's had on the kids, and nobody cares. The kids are exhausted, the teachers will tell you, the principals will show up at the early childhood center on a Thursday and see how these kids are. They're a mess.
I'll be honest, the elementary teachers or principals have said that their tardies have risen drastically. Just like our high schools went down, but the elementaries are.
I thought the high school went down and
Yeah.
significant.
Yeah.
But the start time got started because of Hilton Head High School.
And she's gone and he's gone and we're all still suffering
And
the
the whole attitude that the students should come later and be tardy, they're trying to erase that tardiness.
Yeah.
It's coming in second period.
Well, I think the operations committee.
It's a battle between.
I'll make that.
Which I think is a great idea.
Right. This is not by any means the end of the conversation, and I do apologize that, but we had to get those other things done. You just never know.
And I think that, I know where she's coming from, because she's got a rising 6th grader, and I would be exactly like her if I was there. Because I have 2nd graders, I can sit back a little bit and not panic.
Right.
And that's the
too,
thing,
but
I've been
she's
told
tough.
for so long that this is impossible, I've been told for 3 years that this is impossible. And
We
for
have
a
been
while,
doing
the
this
principals
since
are
you're
really on board with this, and I've noticed in the last 4 or 5 months, they've started saying it can't be done, it can't be done. And I don't know if they're trying to make it easy on all of us, I don't know. So I think when you ask what's the community feel about this, I think they really want it, but they've been told so many times it's possible that they're kind of not thinking about it.
I honestly have not heard that it's not possible. I heard that with the creation of that committee, that this is a viable alternative. And so have you heard that it's not possible, Mr. Campbell?
I'm not talking about the start times, I'm talking about.
I'm hearing,
I am too.
I'm hearing about what they're hearing,
Right.
that it doesn't look like it's viable within any reasonable amount of time. That's the reality of it.
Well,
All
actually,
because of the construction and the academic division right now and the new start from the middle school. There's so many things, dynamics in that until to say that we'll directly go to a 1 to 8 program within the next 5 years, in my mind.
But the crazy thing is,
promising
when this was
something that's not
originally
gonna happen.
proposed to us, we were told it was gonna happen in 8
Oh,
months.
it was an emergency.
Emergency, yeah, this is happening in
We had a
8
meeting
months,
of
if you
creative
don't
arts.
approve the
Mr.
budget.
Otting was there.
Oh, yeah, they
Dr.
had a
Oswald.
whole
Yeah, we were
This
looking to
is-
fast track it.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, this had to happen because of the overcrowding. Oh, yeah.
yeah.
This
And
was
in
not
all
emergency.
honesty,
That's why
I
you
mean-
understand we're going.
Yeah.
No, it was fast track, like I said, it was due to the overcrowding in middle school. And I think the current administrator pushed a lot of it as well, forced a lot of the people to push it. When that got changed, a lot of from the outside is that we're giving the new principal a chance. And the pressure kind of got relieved. It doesn't have to be done immediately because they made the administrator.
And we felt more like it was a threat if we didn't pass the referendum, this is what's happening to you.
Yes.
And the thing was, is we all said, we're interested, but we don't want you to pull this off in 8 months. That's not enough time to plan for this.
So that's how the committee got formed then, though, because then they
Right,
said,
because then-
right,
Because then some of us
They go
expressed
on,
interest afterwards, going, well, we don't want you to throw out the whole idea, we just didn't want you to do it super fast.
And I think in the year, do we now have a turn a little bit on the growth as well? So at the time that, a year ago or more, when we had it, 2 years ago when we started it, the projection on Hilton Head was it continued up. Well, the numbers that next year went down. So that's part of the reasons you had an administrative change, and the numbers as far as growth at the middle school level went from an increase to all of a sudden, Hilton Head stays in that steady up and down, but it turned from up to down. So you're not talking about dramatic growth, a dramatic decrease. It's just it went from a growth model to a decreasing model.
And so now the interest is kind of changed to the fact that there are K or 1-8 schools in other areas, and Hilton Head is somewhat interested in seeing if that model would work well in your area.
And I think at a district level, we do need to, you as the academic committee, do need to look at K-8 models and what it should be. Should it be like the River Ridge model? Should it be, or can it be both? Can you also have the Robert Smalls model? Or should that change and it be like the River Ridge? And I think as we go towards, if a referendum passes, we do replace Robert Smalls, that needs to happen at that point,
In Bluffton, let's just say it, the next school is, we think right around the corner, or needs to be right now.
Yes.
And no one's decided yet what it will be. So if it is K-8, and that's the way of K-8, that really needs to be the district model. And if we're moving everywhere to try to look at K-8, then yes, Hilton Head's an option for it. Well Branch could be an option for it.
kind of a
Ladies Island
modified
Middle could be an
round on
option
campus
for it.
already.
They are, if that's our direction, all those are opportunities to head in that direction, but no one said that's our direction.
Right, so which I think begs the fact that, like Mr. Campbell said, we do have a new superintendent coming on board, and believe me, this is crucial. This is very important, because on the other far end, we do have a middle school that's currently totally underpopulated, and so what could that look like? So it's like Mr. Otting said, it's really a bigger picture of what is the district's policy, what are we looking at, what are we going toward, and so on. So I know it's not moving as fast as you guys had been told it was going to, and then the stops got put on it and so on, but there's a lot of interest about that on this committee.
And, this is the first I heard about the 8-month thing.
Me too.
It was.
We've been trying to, Trish and I have been trying to kind of reconstruct so anyways, I can tell you that, Ms. Kepner, how do you say her name?
Kepner.
She was hoping to come today. She wanted
I
to
saw
come.
her.
Yeah.
I picked my daughter.
So I think that, we've got
She was
to
the one
buy it.
that originally was very interested.
Yeah.
Yeah, very
She likes the
But
K model.
she does, but she
Yeah,
feels
nervous.
that it, from above, that it's not
Yeah, exactly.
feasible.
And she wants it done right, so that
She
it
does.
really is a nice.
Right.
Well,
Right.
and if we're gonna do it, we need to do it, right, but that does delay it a little bit as well.
But I think what Mr. Otting said is right on, is if they build a new school that's K-8, absolutely, that's the way the district should be looking at all the clusters.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, except we'd be
also-
1-8 because we have.
But also,
early
once it's
Right.
built,
We can get rid of that.
the question is, what's the
That principle.
what's the effectiveness of it shown on paper, and is it effective or is it not effective? Because
Right.
we just don't want to go to K models because
Right.
K models just because it's more convenient for the district. Because every area has its own identification and how they adjust. So therefore, we don't want to impede on any communities, and then we create a hostile situation where you have
Like we
more.
did with the start times, right? I mean, that was north of the Broad against south of the Broad,
Right.
because that idea came from south of the Broad.
And it came-
Everybody north of the
exactly.
Broad was,
Not conducive.
yeah, and it was not. It was one principal, one school that just had too much power.
So a motion to adjourn?
Are we gonna set up next meeting time?
Yeah, the third Wednesday of June is the 19th.
Oh, okay, I think I'm in Boston babysitting. I know. Let me verify that.
We could do the 26th.
Let me see. Yeah, I am, I'm babysitting that week.
Are you continuing the K discussion at your next meeting?
I would very much like to, because I think, yes, we are.
We are.
What can I ask y'all this? Can continue, and if he said that, if y'all said that y'all wanna wait till the superintendent get here, and also go back to the community, do you would think that you would want to, wait to continue that, I mean, you might wanna wait, to have that conversation? Because I think there are things on the achievement gap that, how we're going to attack some of those things. I think those are things that we might need to, that are right now pressing issues that we might want to get more into right now. Because the achievement gap coming up into a new year, those are things that we can figure out how we can move achievement. I think that would be more efficient.
So, Mr. Smith, I appreciate that. Mr. Roddick will get back to you on that, okay? Because we have started down one road and we stopped that road, and now we are starting down another road and stopping it, and I don't want to do that. So I appreciate that, because the achievement gap is also something we definitely want Dr. Rodriguez or whomever, for it. So we will confer, the three of us, as to what the agenda is and decide, but I really don't want to stop this down this path, because
He starts July 1.
yeah, if it goes through, right? So Ms. Crutchfield and Mr. Roddick will, I'm not just saying that.
We do want to be part of the K conversation.
Gosh, we need you. We need you to be
Yes.
part of it. So what's the date?
June 26th, June 26th works for me if it works for you all.
It's the last Wednesday of June. Where?
I mean, all those schools are good. It's ratified in their